Note this is a fragment of our upcoming ebook Ancient Design Principles of the Giza Pyramids. Below we quote Herodotus' stories about the pyramids of ancient Egypt, most likely the earliest recorded writings on this subject. The Histories, The Great Pyramid. Herodotus, with an English translation by A.D. Godley. Cambridge. Harvard University Press, 1920. Adnamid Sense 160 by 600_Orange. Herodotus was an ancient Greek historian who was born in Halicarnassus, Caria, modern-day Bodrum, Turkey, and lived in the 5th century BC, c.484 BC, c. 425 BC. He has been called the father of history since he was the first historian known to collect his materials systematically, test their accuracy to a certain extent, and arrange them in a well-constructed and vivid narrative. The Histories, his masterpiece and the only work he is known to have produced, is a record of his Inquiria Historia, a word that passed into Latin and took on its modern meaning of history, being an investigation of the origins of the Greco-Persian Wars and including a wealth of geographical and ethnographical information. Although some of his stories were not completely accurate, he claimed that he was reporting only what had been told to him by Herodotus. These Egyptian stories are for the benefit of whoever believes such tales. My rule in this history is that I record what is said by all as I have heard it. The Egyptians say that Demeter and Dionysus are the rulers of the lower world. The Egyptians were the first who maintained the following doctrine: 2. That the human soul is immortal, and at the death of the body enters into some other living thing, then coming to birth, and after passing through all creatures of land, sea, and air, it enters once more into a human body at birth, a cycle which it completes in 3,000 years. There are Greeks who have used this doctrine, some earlier and some later, as if it were their own. I know their names, but do not record them. They said that Egypt until the time of King Ramsenitis was altogether well governed and prospered greatly, but that Cheops, who was the next king, brought the people to utter misery. For first he closed all the temples, so that no one could sacrifice there, and next, he compelled all the Egyptians to work for him. To some, he assigned the task of dragging stones from the quarries in the Arabian mountains to the Nile, and after the stones were ferried across the river in boats, he organized others to receive and drag them to the mountains called Libyan. They worked in gangs of 100,000 men, each gang for 3 months. For 10 years the people wore themselves out building the road over which the stones were dragged, work which was in my opinion not much lighter at all than the building of the pyramid one, for the road is nearly a mile long and 20 yards wide, and elevated at its highest to a height of 16 yards, and it is all of stone polished and carved with figures. The aforesaid 10 years went to the building of this road and of the underground chambers in the hill where the pyramids stand. These, the king meant to be burial places for himself, and surrounded them with water, bringing in a channel from the Nile. The pyramid itself was 20 years in the making. Its base is square, each side 800 feet long, and its height is the same. The whole is of stone polished and most exactly fitted. There is no block of less than 30 feet in length. This pyramid was made like stairs, which some call steps and others, tiers. When this, its first form, was completed, the workmen used short wooden logs as levers to raise the rest of the stones. They heaved up the blocks from the ground onto the first tier of steps. When the stone had been raised, it was set on another lever that stood on the first tier, and the lever again used to lift it from this tier to the next. It may be that there was a new lever on each tier of steps, or perhaps there was only one lever, quite portable, which they carried up to each tier in turn. I leave this uncertain, as both possibilities were mentioned, but this is certain, that the upper part of the pyramid was finished off first, then the next below it, and last of all the base and the lowest part. There are writings on the pyramid in Egyptian characters indicating how much was spent on radishes and onions and garlic for the workmen, and I am sure that, when he read me the writing, the interpreter said that 1,600 talents of silver had been paid. Now if that is so, how much must have been spent on the iron with which they worked, and the workmen's food and clothing, considering that the time aforesaid was spent in building, while hewing and carrying the stone and digging out the underground parts was, as I suppose, a business of long duration. That is, the stones which were to fill up the angles of the steps, and make the side of the pyramid a smooth inclined plane. The pyramids built by Cheops, Chephron, and Mycerinus respectively are the pyramids of Giza, near Cairo, and so evil a man was Cheops that, needing money, he put his own daughter in a brothel and made her charge a fee. How much, they did not say. She did as her father told her, but was disposed to leave a memorial of her own, and asked of each coming to her that he give 1 stone, and of these stones they said the pyramid was built that stands midmost of the 3, over against the Great Pyramid. Each side of it measures 150 feet. The Egyptians said that this Cheops reigned for 50 years. At his death he was succeeded by his brother Khephren, who was in all respects like Cheops. Khephren also built a pyramid, smaller than his brother's. I have measured it myself. It has no underground chambers, nor is it entered like the other by a canal from the Nile, but the river comes in through a built passage and encircles an island, in which, they say, Cheops himself lies. This pyramid was built on the same scale as the other, except that it falls 40 feet short of it in height. It stands near the Great Pyramid. The lowest layer of it is of variegated Ethiopian stone. Both of them stand on the same ridge, which is about 100 feet high. Khephren, they said, reigned for 56 years. Thus, they reckon that for 106 years Egypt was in great misery and the temples, so long shut, were never opened. The people hate the memory of these two kings so much that they do not much wish to name them, and call the pyramids after the shepherd Philotas, who then pastured his flocks in this place. The next king of Egypt, they said, was Cheops' son Mycerinus. Disliking his father's doings, he opened the temples and let the people, ground down to the depth of misery, go to their business and their sacrifices, and he was the most just judge among all the kings. This is why he is praised above all the rulers of Egypt, for not only were his judgments just, but Mycerinus would give any who were not satisfied with the judgment a present out of his own estate to compensate him for his loss. Though mild toward his people and conducting himself as he did, yet he suffered calamities, the first of which was the death of his daughter, the only child of his household. Deeply grieved over this misfortune, he wanted to give her a burial somewhat more sumptuous than ordinary. He therefore made a hollow cow's image of gilded wood and placed the body of his dead daughter therein. This king, too, left a pyramid, but far smaller than his father's, each side 20 feet short of 300 feet long, square at the base, and as much as half its height of Ethiopian stone. Some Greeks say that it was built by Herodotus, the courtesan, but they are wrong indeed. It is clear to me that they say this without even knowing who Herodotus was. Otherwise, they would never have credited her with the building of a pyramid on which what I may call an uncountable sum of money was spent, or that Herodotus flourished in the reign of Amasis, not of Mycerinus. For very many years later than these kings who left the pyramids came Herodotus, who was Thracian by birth, and a slave of Iadmon, son of Hephaestos the Samian, and a fellow slave of Aesop the story writer. The Histories, The Great Pyramid. Herodotus, with an English translation by A. D. Godley. Cambridge. Harvard University Press, 1920. Note: this is a fragment of our upcoming ebook, Ancient Design Principles of the Giza Pyramids.